Good evening, everybody, and welcome to part 2 of FutureThink Symposium, where we talk to our community and our community panel about big ideas for the future. But first off, I'd like to introduce Uncle Bill, who's going to do an acknowledgement of country.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'd like to acknowledge that we are standing on Buripai country and pay our respects to elders both past and present. I'd like to also extend that respect to our Mayor, Peter Pinson, and to all our panellists here tonight, and to the council staff that are helping out tonight, so thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Uncle Bill. And good evening. Hello, everybody who's tuning in and joining us this evening. It's really good to be with you again. On Tuesday, we had our FutureThink Symposium number 1. And now tonight we have Symposium number 2 with all our panel members who are going to share their big ideas and help you think about yours as we go in towards 2050. I also want to say that today is the start, being October 1st, it's the start of our art walk, and it was a great day, a great way to start. The weather was beautiful. We had artists' markets up on the headland, and there's all the great art and the feature work out there in businesses, 100 in total, the longest footpath gallery. So I really encourage everybody to get out there, enjoy everything that artwork has to offer, and please enjoy this evening as we have our wonderful panel here to share their views with you tonight.
Thank you so much, Peter. What a wonderful welcome for tonight. So first of all, I'm going to introduce our panel. I have a lovely panel with me today to talk through all things future. So we have Lloyd Godson, Trish Davis, Shalise Leesfield, Rachel Shepherd and Uncle Bill. So I'm going to get them all to introduce a bit about themselves and what they're passionate about for the first part. But I do encourage you on Facebook or on YouTube, if you're on there, to start thinking about your big ideas and sending them through so that we can talk about it. But I might start with you, Lloyd. Are you happy to talk about yourself and tell us what you're passionate about?
Yeah, sure thing. So my name's Lloyd Godson. I'm currently a Science and Marine Studies teacher at Hastings Secondary College here. I'm passionate about all things adventure and all things nature. I moved to Port Macquarie about 7 years ago and helped set up the Nature School, which was all about connecting young people in our region to the beautiful nature that we have here to enjoy. And I've tried to carry that over now to my current position as a high school teacher at the Westport campus.
Excellent, thank you, Lloyd. And I know that you entertained and really inspired our young people at our Youth Summit last week around their big ideas for the future. So we might touch on some of them later as well.
Yep, sure thing.
Next up we have Trish. Trish, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're passionate about?
Hello everybody, I'm Trish Davis, and a little bit about myself. Number 6 of 7 children, grew up in Gunnedah, had an idyllic childhood, running around, lots of freedom, and moved to Sydney. Sad when I left Sydney. I've been in Port Macquarie now 37 years and I love where I live, love the Hastings. And what am I passionate about? I'm really passionate about health and wellness and physical activity because my little thing is, I've worked for health for most of my life since I was 18, and my big thing is physical activity because I want to have energy to do all the stuff that I have to do and have enough energy left over to do all the things that I want to do. And so, yeah, wellness and health are my things.
Wellness and health, they are great things to be passionate about. Thanks, Trish. So next time I'm going to go to Shalise. So Shalise, if you want to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about you. I call her our own ocean warrior, but she can tell us a bit more about herself.
Thanks, Lucilla. I'm Shalise Leesfield. I'm 14 years old from Lake Cat, and my campaign is Shalise's Ocean Support, and I began fighting for the ocean over 4 years ago now. And I use my voice to speak for the amazing marine animals out there that can't actually speak for themselves. And I've actually worked with the council to install fishing line collection bins. I've spoken with people from overseas. I often speak at local schools and festivals, so I'm just always using my voice as best as I can to help the ocean. And I love living in Port Macquarie and Lake Cat. It's amazing having the beautiful Pacific Ocean as the focal point of our town, and it's just a gorgeous place to live.
Thanks, Shalise. And how wonderful it is that we have a 14-year-old that is that passionate about their place and their ocean. So thank you. Next up we have Rachel. So Rachel, can I get you to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Lucilla. I'm Rachel Shepherd. I'm a local psychologist living out at Bonny Hills. I'm a member of Rose Wilson's, a couple of her choirs. I'm a gardener. I am very active in the environmental and climate change space. And probably my biggest form of identity at the moment is as a mother. And I think that's what I'm most passionate about now, actually, is my role as a mother, and about leaving a really safe and healthy world for my little one. I was really quite worried in the months after she was born about what the world might look like, and so I spent some time putting my clinical skills to use. I thought if I applied a bit of science, I'd take the emotion out of it and feel a lot better. That didn't happen. Looked at things and actually was really worried, and so it was a big deal when it was a bit of a game changer for me when I came across solutions, in particular to climate change. And I really encourage people to look up things like Beyond Zero Emissions and Project Drawdown, because I think it really gives us an opportunity to be able to look at our challenges as a community right in the eye and come together with our leaders, all levels of government, and as individuals to face things as they are and look at the solutions and commit to working together to achieve them. And one of the things that comes out as a passion-wise for me around that is food security, because everyone loves food, everyone loves supporting local farmers, everyone loves supporting our local economy, everyone loves improving the environment when we can. If you can put all those things together and have a great impact on climate change, you can't go wrong.
Thank you, Rachel. That's fantastic. So lastly on our panel, and not least by any means, is Uncle Bill. Can you tell us what you love about our place and what you're passionate about?
Okay, at the moment I'm a chairperson of the local Birrapai Aboriginal Land Council. And with that, I do a lot of work within community. I'm passionate about keeping culture alive and learning about culture as much as I can, and continuing to share that, and sharing that culture and knowledge with the broader community. High schools, preschools, public schools, the whole box and dice of education. I've also had a fair bit to do with the medical side of things, with the Committee for Aboriginal Health. So working in those areas, you tend to find out who needs what and try and solve those problems, and work with other people to try and fix that and make those links up so we can help the whole community, and just keep pulling it together, and hopefully we'll all get there one day. So probably by 2050 we might have it all sorted.
That would be lovely, wouldn't it? So as you can see, we have a fantastic panel of diverse and broad thinkers. So we want to be talking about your big ideas, so keep them coming in. But first off, I thought that we could talk a little bit about what we heard from our community and from our wonderful speakers on Tuesday night for the first part of FutureThink. So we had Melissa Neighbour and Joshua Karras come and talk to us about sustainability development goals, as well as placemaking, future thinking about our regional places and cities. One of the things, and some of the things that came through from our community, was how do we make sure that we're putting nature first, or at least considering nature and people before we consider development, and how do we manage growth? But also really interesting things like the electric bikes, or car-free CBDs, which I know Trish is very keen on, and if anyone saw the video at the end of Tuesday night, they would know that. So Trish, I know that you watched on
I certainly did.
Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us what you took away from that and what really inspired you?
Well, first of all, I thought it was just amazing, the two speakers that you had, Melissa and Joshua. It was so inspiring. But I loved it when, well, Melissa had a lot of examples of what cities and towns were doing all over the world. But I loved it when she talked about nudge theory, because in my work I really like that nudge theory. And she was talking about nudging people out of their cars and nudging them back onto the streets, and making the streets more pedestrian friendly, and walkability was really important. And yeah, I really connected with that. I thought that was just fantastic. And the other thing that I loved was the parklets. I love those pop-up parklets. She had photos of parking spaces where they'd taken the parking space, built a little seat, and made it really pretty, and people could sit there and look around. It just made it so really interesting, and I thought they were really simple ideas.
And they
Loved
are
it.
simple ideas that we can actually implement now as well as into the future. We do have a parklet in our own Horton Street in front of one of the shops, and looking at ways that we can do that differently. I think the other thing that's interesting from walkability is it's kind of coming around full circle. We went through the whole industrial age of moving people off horses and into cars, and now we want to get people out of cars and onto streets. So does anyone else, Rachel, did you have any thoughts on Tuesday night or the big ideas that you heard from that?
I thought it was fabulous, and I think there was some talk about too much focus on the cities, and I can understand that. I think we also need to talk about how we do things in our rural areas, and there's some great plans out there. Regional Horizons is a good one to look at. But if Council's doing a lot of land use planning at the moment and looking at how we're going to make our community look into the future based how we use our land. If we want our population to grow, which is a question to ask, we want to do that in a way that's consistent with retaining our beautiful environment, which we value so much. And some of the ideas they had that we might think are more applicable in a big city, like having green buildings that are built right from the start, designed right from the start, that are green in every way, including literally on the outside, the gardens built into the building. We're talking about building cities that are compatible with safety and a beautiful space for our community into the future that can facilitate population growth if we take a proactive approach to how that population growth happens.
One of the interesting things, and we received some community comments about the green buildings in particular, was they're fabulous for new development, but how do we make sure that we don't lose the green? Because in cities you'll note that they build them because they've lost the green. How do we keep the green and build green, if that makes any sense? Did anyone else have anything that they wanted to share from Tuesday night or ideas in that space?
I just like what I seen there was the edible gardens around the place, which was a very good idea. I thought that could work in really well.
And it has come up a number of times through our focus groups and the community strategic planning engagement around how do we actually now, not wait to 2050, create edible verges.
There's lots of reasons why you do that, because it gets people out, community, walking around their neighbourhoods, talking, communicating. It's a beautiful concept.
It is. It is. So the other question that I had, which I think comes from Tuesday night, but also about the community strategic plan in general, is how do we, what are the ways that council and community can actually work together to create change, which I know is a really big question, but have you got any ideas? And I might start with you, Shalise, being the youngest person on the panel. What do you think is, are there better ways that council and community can work together to create change, whether it's looking after the ocean or creating better development?
Yeah, I guess coming at it from the perspective of a young person, we're going to be the next generation of working adults in 2050, so definitely prioritising our future and what the town's going to look like in 2050 is a huge, huge priority. But I think that one way that we could improve our future with including the council is making services more available. So I know in a building city like ours, there's always wait lines for like doctor's appointments, and there's mental health too. And then I've found even myself that I've been put on wait lists and then been taken off, and it's just very hard to get in. So maybe improving some of those services.
Yep. Excellent. What about you, Lloyd? Council and community working for change?
I think more opportunities for the community and council to engage, like events like this are fantastic. To actually hear the voice of the people in the community and then implement those changes into an action plan. I think that's a great step forward.
And one thing I would love to ask you, because you were involved in our youth summit, as I mentioned last week, week 4, the young people like Shalise and Olga, some of the ideas that they came up with from the youth summit. I know that they were very interested in the fact that you lived under the ocean for a certain amount of time, but with some really great ideas from them.
Yeah, we had a lot of really positive energy, and I think what's really important for our young people in the region is to make them feel like their voice actually does count and that their ideas will be listened to and potentially implemented. But yeah, they had some really futuristic ideas around our public toilet facilities. That was they were pretty obsessed with the toilets, public toilets, using things like augmented reality to make people feel connected with nature while they're on the toilet, but things like self-cleaning toilets and using the space creatively, like rooftop gardens, self-sufficient, waterless, all those kind of technologies in the toilets.
And they really are thinking about the future. One of the, which will interest Shalise, one of the primary school groups came up with an under ocean walk.
Oh.
Walkability, but being able to interpret and tell and educate about our ocean as well. Not how sure environmentally friendly that would be, but you know, great idea. In maybe it could be augmented reality underwater walk. Who knows? Uncle Bill, how can council and community work together to make change?
Well, we've made little steps in working together, and I think there can be a lot more done. And I think that will, you know, unite us even more. As I said, we've taken little steps, and now it's time to stretch those steps out a bit more and look at ways that we can connect. Yesterday I attended a cultural burn, and this was just so, how would you put it, exciting, and to be part of it, it was just enormous. Because you know, it's the first time we've had a cultural burn for a long time, and to have that happen, you know, when we get State Forest was a big player in that, and you know, it just brings that home to the local Aboriginal people exactly what we've missed out on for quite a while. And I think we need to reconnect, get our mob to reconnect to country, and then bring in all the other players to see what we're about. And I think that's what we really need.
Absolutely. Rachel, did you want to say something about council and community working together? I know we had a quick chat before tonight.
Look, I think there's a huge responsibility both on council and community to be coming to the table together, and I say that from the point of view as someone who really hasn't been engaged with politics or any sort of decision making until about 2 years ago when I started worrying a bit more about the future. And I was actually really shocked to realise all of the opportunities that were available for us to have a say, literally through the Have a Say portal, obviously, and I really encourage people to go and have a look at that. There are lots of opportunities, and we miss them if we're not looking for them. But the other side of things, for me with council in particular, in terms of coming to the table, is probably unsurprisingly specifically around climate change, which is that the community would assume if there's, you know, particular information that council is aware of that is actually really critical for the community to know, that affects everyone in our economy and our health and our safety, and they're including it in their business operations and that sort of thing. It's reasonable that our community would assume if those things were happening, our leaders, our councillors, our council would tell us that. And so I think council's actually taking huge steps towards that communication with our community, but the language of resilience and livability and whatnot doesn't actually make it clear to our community the need for action. And it's having really accurate, clear communication about the relevance of these issues to their lives that allows the community to naturally feel motivated to come and engage. So I think the community stepping up to engage with council is really important, but I also think accurate communication from council, transparent communication about what the relevant issues are for our future is really important to help elicit that engagement from the community.
Yep, excellent. We are getting some questions and comments through from our community, which is fantastic. So people agreeing with, so Philip Morton from Rollins Plains, riding bikes in rural areas need to be developed to encourage people to get out into the country and encouraging more cottage industries, which is a great idea. Catherine, yes, children and young people have incredible ideas, and how do we harness those into the future? Any ideas on how, I know that Uncle Bill, you talked about education, as did Lloyd. How do we harness young people? It's a bit like the rest of the community. How do we encourage people to want to get involved in what we're talking about and have a desire to get involved in?
I think if young people, like I said before, if they feel like their ideas are being listened to and taken seriously, then they're more than keen to share all their creative and energetic ideas for the future. But they really do need to feel like it's been valued and been implemented, and that it is making a difference, and it's not just a tokenistic way of, you know, trying to get youth keen to stay in our region. And I think it needs to, like, quite often even with Facebook forums and things like that, it can get really negative really quickly. I think it needs to be conducted in a way that it's positive and constructive. Quite often people like council will talk about something that they're doing for the community, and people will start attacking them for random things that have nothing to do with what they're talking about, and I think it's quite counterproductive. I think there needs to be forums where youth are invited in, and it's constructive and positive, and they feel listened to and valued, and because they do have, as Catherine says, they've got some really fantastic and amazing ideas.
They do, yeah. And there is a very high Aboriginal young population. How do we get them involved in what we're doing from a community perspective?
I think it comes back to just encouragement, making sure that we look after their needs, and bringing them in, as was discussed, bringing them in, listen to their ideas and take note of their ideas and encourage them to follow those ideas through.
Yep.
Give them a future that they think that they can handle and look at, and nurture them all the way through. You know, throw the support behind them, and make sure that we don't let them go into a mental state where they're going to just chuck it all away. We need to keep that mentoring behind them and encourage them more.
Yep.
I think that would be a long way of going to fixing a lot of our young.
And I think that seeing action happen and the implementation that Lloyd spoke of is really important as well. We do have a question from Andrew around our consultative committee and what happened to that. So we used to have a consultative committee a number of years ago, before my time, that met to talk about some of these things, but we're trying to look at different ways to do that into the future. And I think the forums that we had for the community strategic plan and the ambassadors that we have sitting with us today are part of that. What do we do for the future? And even the working group that we had for COVID was 50 people from across the community helping us come up with responses for that. What I might do now, though, is move on to big ideas. So imagining, 30 years from now, it seems like a really long way away, but if you think back 30 years for everybody except Shalise, because she wasn't here, we have had so much change in 30 years. We didn't have mobile phones or internet or lots of different things that we currently, pull a phone out of our back pocket, which is probably more powerful than the computer that went to the moon, I understand. So how do we come up with big ideas that are tangible that people can understand for the future? So I am going to go around one by one and start with what's your big idea? So this time I might start with Shalise, just to throw a mix in. What's your big idea for the future, and what would you like to see happen by 2050?
I do have a couple of ideas, if that's okay, just a couple of small ideas.
Absolutely.
I reckon, as being a young person coming from this perspective, making sure that we also contribute to our future too, so it's not just the council. So it all starts with us, because we're going to be the working generation, so maybe getting in school actually studying topics like STEM and science and engineering, just so in the future we can study things like how to make our town more sustainable, like creating biodegradable plastics, just things like that, always thinking about our future as a town. And then there's working towards eliminating single-use plastics. It does sound like a big ask, but as it's been proven before, like a ripple effect, if one person does it, then other people do it, and it's not too hard if you work together with a community like this. And it's just things like not using single-use straws, things like that. They're very simple things. And it comes down to thinking about what you buy as a consumer. And then there's also actually tourism, and how it affects our town. At the moment, there's a lot of people staying in Port Macquarie, which is awesome to see. But researchers do suggest that the average tourist does actually produce sometimes twice the amount of plastic as the residents in the town would. So that's a big issue that I think we have to focus on. And there's things like contacting local hotels and making sure that the toiletries are all like recycled toilet paper and things like that. Just simple things that all add up. And then there's local even takeaway shops, because when you're on holiday you do take away a lot because you're not really at home to make food yourself. And there's making more sustainable packaging, biodegradable packaging, and then even loyalty programs for customers that continually use those reusable food containers. And then there's encouraging our local businesses to become more environmentally friendly. So things like encouraging them to think about their impacts on our beautiful oceans in our town, and selling products like solar panels, rainwater tanks and solar hot water, and using products that are recycled, things like that. So there's a couple of points there to focus on, but just a general idea I had.
They're fantastic points, and things that are achievable from a personal perspective as well as an overall community perspective. And you've got Linda who's agreeing with you about elimination of single use, and there's probably education around tourist season and how we do that better from a waste reduction perspective, because there's only so many landfills that we can fill, so how do we actually get to a point where we're not doing that? So Rachel, your big idea for 2050, and so that you can create a place that's safe for your little one.
Yes, yes. So my big idea is around the development of a regional food strategy. So the idea of regional food strategy is basically that you set a goal that we will have enough healthy food for our community. And so to me, that's a pretty good goal to have.
That's a great goal.
And so with a strategy then as well, yes, you set that goal, but then you also set targets that you can see if you're achieving a goal or not, and you have, of course, actions that indicate whether you're moving towards it or not. So earlier today, I put an example of a regional food strategy on the Engage PMH Facebook group. Facebook page. So if you're interested in looking at an example, I really encourage you to go look at the Cardinia food strategy. And in terms of why I think that's a really good one for us to follow up is, so, you know, as I said earlier, we talk about resilience and livability, but food, water, energy, and arguably other things really come down to meeting the basic needs of us and our community. We have, Council has a water strategy, water security strategy, long-term energy strategy, but we don't have a food strategy. And there are going to be times that, you know, we know are going to happen with the bushfires, smoke, floods, all of these things that we know are going to happen, where our food security is going to be more and more challenged. On a bigger scale as well. So a regional food strategy that's really setting out to secure food security is of course great in that way, but the other thing I love about it is that it doesn't really matter if you're concerned about climate change or not. Everyone can get on board with food security and supporting, as I said, supporting local farmers, regenerative agriculture, which people might have seen in the news recently, agritourism, agricultural business. There's a whole area available for us to go into in terms of economic development that has so many awesome impacts on our community, including food security.
Excellent. So food security #1 for 2050. Excellent. I'm going to come along to Trish now for your big idea, because I know that you have one, or several.
Well, I've got lots.
You can go lots.
Well, the reality is we all know we live in such a fabulous place, and more people are realising that, and I suspect that there's going to be a lot of people that move here. And so it's so, I agree with everybody, we really have to look after our environment. But the thing for me is the green spaces and the blue spaces, which we've got loads of, but in 2050, I'm going to have grandchildren that are going to have kids of their own, and I want them to be able to know that they live in a place that we've taken care of, we've looked after it, we haven't done damage, and there's walkable neighbourhoods. It's a beautiful, livable city and regional area, because it's just got such a natural beauty that we need to take advantage of, look after and care for. But yeah, getting people walking and having those walkable neighbourhoods where people, it's all about social capital. People feeling connected and not being isolated in their homes. Having those footpaths that connect streets together, and having a 20-minute walk and being able to get shops and whatever you need. And I think my really big idea that I really want to work on with council, and that's the other thing, you're right, it's council and it's everybody else in the community, it's both our responsibilities. We hear negative stuff, but there's so many people out there that have fabulous ideas, and that we just need you to comment and come on board and help. That's what I see my role as an ambassador, to encourage you all to get involved in this, because I really do believe that council's making some great steps and they are listening, and it's a fantastic opportunity. We've all got a vision for what we want in 2050, and I want to see in the not too distant futures that just for a couple of hours on a Sunday even, that we close our CBD and get people walking and skating and riding bikes, talking to one another, a bit like the art walk. It's beautiful at the moment.
We could be selling fresh produce and
Absolutely.
looking after food security.
Absolutely. But once people start to do that, they'll then get behind and be the voice in the community that supports these ideas, that gets council on board, and we need your voices. We want to be heard.
Yep.
livable, walkable, green spaces, interesting streets that get people out and about and talking and connected.
What a fabulous vision for the future you have in your
Yes.
head there, Trish. We've got a great comment here from Jackie around that we have so much to learn from our Indigenous community in the way that they have been custodians of the land for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So from bush tucker to Aboriginal law and totems, this knowledge provides a unique lens to view conservation of our natural environment. So let's create programs and events that promote communication of this previous knowledge. So Uncle Bill, you talked about sharing the culture before. How do we share the culture with not just your Aboriginal people, but also the wider community so that we can learn the lessons that you have known for tens of thousands of years?
Okay, I remember quite a few years ago I did mention that we could have a community event where we not just have Aboriginal culture, but we have all the other different cultures around the world. So have like a food fest here in Port Macquarie, where each individual can go there and taste the different types of foods. And included in that would be the Aboriginal bush foods, the kangaroo, crocodile, whatever they want to try, let them have a go at it. I think that's a really unique way of bringing community together.
Yep.
And also, when you talk about Aboriginal culture, when we tell stories, our stories have meanings. It tells explains to the young ones, all the good things, and not to do the bad things. It's about education. So when the women used to tell those stories, there was a purpose behind it. When the women would take the children out, boys and girls, it was about teaching them about country, what's on country, what's good for country and what's not good for country. Then you have the separation of men's business and women's business. These are things that a lot of people don't understand. Mm-hmm. People don't understand what our traditional laws were and how they worked. And once they get a better understanding of that, then they get a better understanding of where we come from. Because, I've been pushing a lot of that stuff forward, but it's only into small minority groups. And we need to bring that right out. And when you talk about 2050, I can remember as a child, and there was a show called Dick Tracy. And Dick Tracy had a watch, and he used to have that as a phone.
Yep.
So today we have that phone, watch, okay? So in 2050, I'm nearly 70, and I probably won't be around to see it, but I'd like to see us all be united and moving in the one direction. The best thing for this country, the best thing for our land, and the best thing for all our people. That's what I see.
Excellent. That's a great vision for 2050.
Beautiful.
And hopefully you will still be here. Because Trish has had the same
plan
conversation.
to be.
So we've got a comment here from Kez. Plan to complete footpaths to link sporting fields, schools, residential areas is really important. That she said particularly along Koala Street. We have heard a lot from our community as a general theme around active transport. So how do we create paths for both cycling, walking, to provide a different transport option? We might go to transport as big ideas. Lloyd, have you got ideas on transport for the future?
Yeah, it's funny, today I was down at the netball courts on my unicycle and a guy came whizzing past on a self-balancing electric unicycle, and I think that's going to be something we have to plan for in the future too, is that our footpaths won't be just used by electric bikes and cyclists and walkers. They're going to be used by all kinds of innovative vehicles. We're already seeing lots of people getting around on electric skateboards. In Dubai, they've trialled the use of self-flying drones to move people from building top to building top. Yep. So, yeah, in 30 years' time, we're going to be seeing a whole range of different vehicles using our footpaths that we don't see currently. So we need to sort of be proactive and think ahead in that respect as well.
Absolutely. And Trish, I know your views on active transport.
Yes, and I totally agree about Koala Street and around Pacific Drive. The footpaths, they're just so important. And active transport, like car sharing, if you've got to get in a car. But our legs are great. And it's interesting, we did a study probably 10 years ago, and we found out that most of the people, and I wish I knew the percentage, of people live within 10 kilometres of where they work, which is fabulous, to car share, electric bikes, but we need this. We need to feel safe when we're doing it.
Yeah.
So that's the big
So
barrier
the safety
at
of the
moment.
active transport, which is that
Yes.
sharing.
Yeah, I mean, some of these unicycles go at up to 65 k's an hour, and you can't be going on footpaths.
The electric unicycle is just blowing my mind. I can't even imagine. I mean, I've seen you on your unicycle because you've been down to the netball courts when I'm training my little team, but yeah, it's craziness. We do have some more comments. Bike buses.
Oh, they're fantastic. Well, that was on Tuesday night. Melissa had a beautiful example of the kids all pedalling away, and they were all in a bus. It was fantastic.
Yeah,
they're all over the world.
This comment has come from Catherine at the Nature School, and it was something I suggested a few years ago as a way of getting the kids to and from school through the Gugik track. They're pretty common in Amsterdam and other countries where cycling is huge and it's pretty flat, but you can have up to 12 children cycling on a bike bus with a teacher steering, and I thought, what a great way to start the day.
Step up from the walking school bus.
We have this
fabulous.
amazing Gugik track there. What a fantastic way to start your day with these children. So,
Yeah, we're getting lots of comments too through our Facebook page, and thanks for adding your comments, everybody, around it's tied to food security but also water security. So how can we increase the ability to store water on farms and dams so that we don't lose as much, that can help our systems, or using swales and contours to help replenish groundwater. Really great ideas coming through. Growing food, having chickens, growing your own mulch and cutting out the middleman, which is that self-responsibility for growing your own food.
So some of the benefit of that side of things is actually how much it reduces waste as well. When people are growing their own, and especially when it's, you know, when people are doing some of these things in their front yards, like what Trish was talking about, it ends up creating all sorts of community engagement as well. Sorry for interrupting.
No, it's great. I'm trying to read the next comment. It's not up there yet. That's okay. So Linda's put up, I didn't get to Ali's because you moved. Can you go back up to Ali's, please? Sorry, everybody. Technical. Thank you. So Ali's written by 2050, and hopefully way before then, everybody understands that there's no away and every purchase they make is important. And so that's about food waste, composting, your own local community garden. So we talked about community gardens. I think the young people in the primary school, it could have been the high school, talked about community farms. So actually creating community farms that served a whole lot of purposes, but yes, reducing waste, and that everybody has a sense of abundance and sharing. I think it is again going back to what people used to do around sharing produce, sharing things. We travel actively, most locally, walking, cycling, which is safe and easy to do because our paths are all safe and they're linking our satellite towns. So Ali's agreeing with the concept that you were talking about before, and our flora and fauna is flourishing because our activities aren't impacting on the environment.
That's what we want.
How good would that be, Ali?
Yes.
And yes, hopefully before 2050. But if we can achieve that by 2050, I think that we've actually made it as a community. But what are the other things our community needs? I know that Lloyd talked about, we do get comments when we do engagement around things. We talk about our bigger issues when we hear from councillor about roads and transport and development.
I think a lot of these ideas that we've spoken about, they're all connected via education, and I think it's going to be become more and more important to educate our children on these matters and get them actively involved. So my big idea would be to put Port Macquarie on the map as an Earth-centric education hub for Australia. You know, it's where
I like that. Earth-centric.
We make the environment and environmental education at the core of all of our schools, and then everything else kind of stems from that. That would be my big idea, and
That's a great idea.
It seems to be all of us have spoken about big ideas that centre around the environment or those kind of issues.
And you're in a great place to get that happening with the Nature School.
Yeah, well, when I first moved here, it was one of the first things I helped co-found, and I'm still very passionate about connecting people with nature, even as a way of mental health. You know, during COVID, I know that it was really difficult as an educator to connect with our students remotely, and how much the students missed connection with their other students, with their teachers, with the environment, with themselves. And so I think connection is really, really important. I know that there's a lot of great technology out there which allow us to do things remotely, and it has its place, but I think you can't replace that connection with nature and with other people and yourself. So that's something we need to have at the centre of our Earth-centric schools.
Excellent. And how do we influence, obviously schools are challenging because we have so many different types of schools, particularly in Port Macquarie. We're lucky that we've got a vast choice of different schools. But how do we create Port Macquarie as that centre of earth-centric education with working with the state schools, or is that something that is they're interested in hearing from local communities on how to educate kids?
Yeah, look, I work as a teacher in the public system, and it is harder in the public system, I guess, to get traction and to make change, but all it takes is a few passionate educators to band together, and you know, if they're passionate about something, that group will grow, and that's how you create change, I guess. And I'm trying to implement some of the things that we were doing with the nature school into the public system, because I saw the benefits and saw how valuable those things were, and I want it to be larger than just the nature school. I want it to be something that benefits the whole community.
Yep. We are hearing more from our community around connections and pathways, and I think people are pretty passionate about pathways because they are connections from each other to places. Ali's also saying how interesting it is that we're talking about sustainability, which is bringing all these things together, but it's positive for economic outcomes as well, and us being a leader. So how does Port Macquarie Hastings Council become the leader in this space, which I think is important, whether it's removing single-use plastics or providing food security, water security, harnessing all of our culture together.
Can I make a comment on
Absolutely.
that, actually? So I think it's a really good example of actually where council and community are really on the same page right now. You know, you've got the example where Lloyd's given, where members of the community have literally come together and built a school, you know, based on kind of like the vision you've just described. So absolutely walking the talk. And, you know, we've got other schools that have started the same way in our area. And I guess I just want to flag for the community as well that council, my perception is council is making a huge change in the very direction that Lloyd's describing at the moment. I think most of us have had the perception previously that what's driven council operations is economics, you know, economic interest, and it's kind of just drifted towards that singular focus. But their recent strategic planning is actually showing something really different, and I really encourage people to look at the draft LSPS,
Local Strategic Planning Statement.
Yes.
that thing, because it really signals a turn away from an economy-only, economy-first approach for our council operations, and a turn towards actually interest in our nature as what is the basis of our wellbeing as a community. So I don't know that what Lloyd is describing is terribly different from what could come to fruition if the community were coming forward and saying, hey, look at this statement, this is what we want, and take it further.
And one of the great things from the Local Strategic Planning Statement is that it is set in the Sustainable Development Goals that we spoke about on Tuesday night with Joshua, around how do we measure climate change, food, poverty, health, wellbeing, education. It is a great livability document, I think. But from a livability perspective, and probably a little bit more focused on outcomes or infrastructure or other big ideas in that space, does anyone have any big thoughts on other things that they might see, as in physically see, for 2050?
Probably won't have any cars.
Probably won't have any cars?
No, you'll be flying around in a drone.
I think that we might get closer to that, given that there are flying vehicles at this point, and Melbourne's a testing base for flying vehicles as well, so it is something that is happening. But it's a little bit like the driverless cars, which kind of freaks me out even more than a flying car. But we've talked about active transport, so if we have connected footpaths, we need less roads.
That's right. Green spaces, beautiful parks, interesting. Lots of green space.
Do you think if our schools were earth-centric, which I'm going to steal because I love that word.
Yeah, it's great.
Earth-centric, that our schools themselves will change? They're very much... The idea of the nature school is that there's no necessarily big structures or anything. I love the idea of a
even when I
education
talk to
space.
the students at Hastings Secondary College, we're lucky we've got a little bit of forest that kind of adjoins the school, and we're quite fortunate in that sense. And the kids love getting out there. Whenever we sort of brainstorm ideas for how we could improve the school, it's usually around the architecture, the buildings, to incorporate that into the design a lot more. So, yeah, I'd love to see some futuristic looking schools that incorporate the local elements into their architecture.
That'd be great. Absolutely. So we do have a comment from Dimitri, and we're not suggesting at all that we don't have to still have a very strong economy as we move forward. Part of the LSPS does focus on our economy and how do we grow that, but it's how do we grow that in a sustainable way that actually supports our people, our place, their health, and our planet.
Also a way that's economically sustainable, because ultimately if we destroy the environment and the health of the people on which the economy relies upon for labour and that sort of thing, that we're setting up for the economy to fail too. So, of course, you know, balancing those things.
Yep. We have a couple of other comments from Kez. Earth-centric council area could incorporate Aboriginal cultural practices and principles, and that would support what Uncle Bill was saying earlier with walking together in the future. Solar housing. Medium density. We talked about density on Tuesday night, and density is not a bad word. Density is a great word in the right places, and I think that's where those green buildings come into it. But medium density with connected community gardens for biodiversity and roads becoming gardens and nature.
Love that. And there's actually really good evidence about medium density being a wellness predictor, because that's when people do feel connected.
Yep.
So it's not a bad word.
And we know that we have 30% of our population is older.
Yes.
And that is going to continue into the future. So we need to consider that age group as well and how we support them. And I think you mentioned in one of your videos, Trish, about growing old in place and how do we do that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I want to be able to grow old, living here with no restrictions and having things available for me and maintain my health.
Yep.
Yeah, I want to be able to walk, I want to be able to enjoy everything, our beautiful environment, and just see that it. Oh, I go on and on about being looked after.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Shalise, we talked earth-centric education. You're in the education system now. How would you see an earth-centric school? What would it look like to you?
Yeah, I guess when I was going through, especially primary school, looking back and seeing all the amazing programs that are in place, there's gardening going on there. The little kids are taking all their fruit and veg from the garden to the canteen, things like that, that just looking back, that's awesome. And I wish I could have been involved in that, but seeing all the new programs popping up in schools. And I think even maybe involving sustainability or something like that into the curriculum, working with the people that make the curriculum to hopefully involve that in, because it's going to be a huge topic in our future, and I guess studying it in school also, as I said before, would be good for everyone to learn about what we need to do in our future.
And I think the ageing in place that we were talking about links back to your services for the community. So how do we provide enough? We know we're a growing community. We talked about people wanting to move here. We've realised through this pandemic that people can work from anywhere, so why not work from paradise? How do we actually manage that as we move forward? Because we need to manage the growth as well as manage the service provision and the growing old in place.
That's right, because it's going to require a lot more services and a lot more support. That's why we've got to keep people healthy.
Yes, and walk.
Yes, keep walking.
Hamish has got a great idea. Would love to help plan a food forest to teach kids how to learn to grow food using permacultural principles, increasing diversity, reducing the need for any sprays and creating habitat. That's a great idea. One of the things I was reading about, and I think it popped up through Melissa Neighbours' talk, was around not only connecting wildlife corridors, but then connecting potentially food corridors. So you have open spaces that are connected that provide that. Phil's got another comment. I think if we looked at this conversation and count the amount of times Port Macquarie has mentioned, you may be aware the reason rural areas west of the highway feel resources are economy, tourist, food, mental welfare, youth development, production, environment are missing out. So when I say Port Phillip, I'm not just talking about Port Macquarie. I'm actually just cutting Port Macquarie Hastings short, which is completely wrong of me. We actually mean the whole of our local government area and how that could be, what that could look like in 2050. So we're not meaning to cut you out at all.
And there's nothing better than getting out there and hiking and walking. There's some beautiful trails. It's glorious to get out there and recharge the batteries. So yes, Phillip.
It does raise interesting points, though, about how we help expand the economic development, the benefits of the economic development into the outer villages as well.
Yep.
And I think, you know, I always keep coming back to the food stuff, but, you know, if we're looking at incorporating agritourism, agribusiness into especially regenerative agriculture into our economic development strategy and purposefully fostering that as an area. That's looking at pushing people out into those areas of the community that that need it more, but also you're talking about type of tourism that spreads itself outside of the bushfire season now, and depending on how long the pandemic goes for, it's almost so more pandemic friendly because it's a lower density tourism.
Yeah, and we've actually had that conversation just last week with Phil around how to encourage people to go and visit those villages, towns, other parts of our local government area that do have great produce, whether it's the avocados and blueberries up in Comboyne or the other produce that's available in Kendall and Rollins Plains, and how do we get people to go and visit those places and encourage them to stay in those places because they've got a lot of camping available in that space as well. Bree, we do have a comment from Bree around public transport, and yes, it isn't the best right now, but as we said, this is a conversation about 2050 and how can we get better, and flying cars are potentially 30 years off, and we are working as a council with Transport for New South Wales around how we can improve bus travel and active transport routes, so that's the kind of thing that we do. But yes, encouraging more children to catch school buses may alleviate traffic. It is a challenge. Uncle Bill, any other ideas for the future?
Well, I just picked up on a couple of things there. With the rural towns and their produce, we could produce a food map. Yeah,
Great idea.
So, you know, why don't we have something that explains each town and what's available in those particular small communities? Because if we were to do that, we would then encourage people to go out and buy fresh produce. And it's all local stuff. So we're supporting our community that way. And the other thing is, yeah, the flying cars are I was just having a bit of a smart remark there. But when you stop and think about our education system, what we're starting to do now in the education system, we're starting to put in the cultural circles and also the bush tucker gardens. Yep. So that's all happening within our schools, within the Hastings. So there is a lot happening, but it's all, you don't hear much about it.
Yep.
Okay, so being in the community, I know a fair bit that's happening with our schools and what they're trying to achieve. So a lot of these things can be solved. It'll probably go a bit of a way if we were to have our food stores, our water storage. It might also help if we have somebody that can, you know, with our mental capacity, all this freedom that we have, if we were to hit these little things on the head, we might be able to help someone that's suffering with a bit of mental illness. We'll also come into our homeless people. We might be able to do a lot more for them, and also for our aged population. Yep. Because a lot of them are missing out on the connection with other people. And these are the things that we probably need to also be looking at, not for ourselves, but for our own mental capacity, which will all bring us, again, try and bring us together.
Yep. So community connection is key for the future.
Got it, baby.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, I do notice that we are getting close to time, but I don't want to cut any of you off. So big ideas, keep them coming. Phil Morton loves your food map idea, Uncle Bill.
We just had a message too from Jackie Murray talking about how many teachers don't feel confident teaching sustainability in schools, and perhaps teaching about our Indigenous history as well. So I feel like part of my big idea was that by putting Port Macquarie on the map as a hub for this type of thing, that people could come and learn from some of our amazing educators, people like Uncle Bill.
Absolutely.
So they can take that back to their community as well.
And I think it's exciting that our young people are getting exposed to these things in the schools, whether it's the Aboriginal culture or the ideas that you're coming through, or even the Youth Summit. If we can get it there, and Shalise is an example of this, you've been doing this since you were 10. So if we can find some more Shalises in the world, imagine how great Port Macquarie would be if we can really inspire our young people to understand all of this and have their ideas come to fruition. And I think your point about getting things implemented and seeing that their voices count is really key. Any other last thoughts, Trish?
Oh gosh, it's just been wonderful to be able to sit here and listen to all this, and like I said, I just see it now, using my voice to get out there in the community and get people really interested and connected. Get on the website. There's so much opportunity, and yeah, it's been fabulous. Yeah.
Excellent.
I definitely think from sitting here and listening to everyone that I reckon Port Macquarie will become a leading coastal town in sustainability and everything that we've talked about tonight. And I'm very hopeful for the future now.
Excellent. Rachel.
I just love the, you know, the images that kind of get in mind thinking about, you know, what we're visioning here, and, you know, and I think about these walkable spaces. And, you know, I imagine things like lily pillies and pecan trees, you know, growing in our public spaces, and the verge gardens full of flowers that the bees and insects are loving, and, you know, those sorts of things. And, of course, you know, the farm gates and all of that sort of thing that are really important. And I just think that will be a really nice way to live, you know.
Does sound fabulous, doesn't it? Uncle Bill, last thoughts?
Last thoughts, I'd just like to say thank you for the opportunity to come and sit here tonight. I think it's been great to hear everybody's visions on 2050 and what we can lead and what we can probably work towards in achieving together.
Excellent. Well, I would like to personally thank all of you for putting yourselves out here tonight and having this conversation with Council. It's been great to hear your thoughts, and the people on the screen, behind the screen. We really would love to encourage everybody to get involved in this process. This is a process that will go on for a number of months to come, but we are hearing some amazing emerging themes around managing our growth, sustainability, educating our young people, and connecting our community, I think is really important, and coming together and sharing those stories and our culture, and all active transport, getting out and walking, looking after each other. This isn't the final bit, so this was the let's think big ideas and encourage you to broaden your thinking and come up with new ideas for the future. But our next steps are developing our vision and our themes, and then coming up with the actions that will actually form our community strategic plan. So late October, look out for an invite to our roundtable workshops to develop that vision. We hope you'll all be there. Encourage your neighbours and friends to get involved, and then we'll develop our actions in later November to produce a draft document. So we would love for you to share this conversation that we've had tonight with your friends and family through Facebook or YouTube, or encourage them to get onto Council's website and get involved. We really can only make a difference if we all do it together. So thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed it, but keep coming with those big ideas. We're happy to hear them. Thank you very much.